This happened when I was a small child, and I actually remember this one myself. It took place in the same room in my other story. We lived in this house up until I was about 7 or 8. It was Easter, and my sister and I had gotten 2 medium-sized boxes full of candy and small Easter-themed toys. Because we were little kids with a ton of candy and new little knickknacks, we were excited and ended up making a huge mess in our shared room. We spent most of the morning just playing. Around lunchtime, my grandmother walked in to tell us that she was making us something to eat, but we needed to clean up our room and put our stuff back in their respective boxes before we left the room. So that's what we did, leaving the boxes in the middle of the floor. Well, our grandmother checked to make sure we did as we were told and was satisfied. We sat down to eat and watch cartoons. We didn't hear anything out of the ordinary, and we sat in the living room for about 30 minutes or so. When we went back into the room, it looked as if someone had angrily picked up the boxes and dumped them out before throwing them away from the middle of the floor. Our grandmother heard us being loud because we were so confused. She, of course, thought that we did it and scolded us for tearing the boxes up and making a huge mess again. But we didn't do it. And we knew neither one of us had been back in that room since the beginning of lunch. No one else was in the house, and I really doubt my grandmother was the culprit. This is one of my earliest experiences, so I had not given the entity I believe responsible a nickname. But as time went on and more things occurred, me and my sister named this entity the Mystery Man. You hear about kids being able to talk to and see spirits, and both my sister and I would end up seeing something. This is why we would call it a man, because it was not childlike in our eyes, nor was it feminine. I'm not one to actually believe much in ghosts and spirits, but this night still keeps me wondering. One night last year, the month of October, some friends and I decided to go to an old church, Rambert Church in Ashwood, South Carolina. I have been to this church with some of the same friends at least 3 times. It's known to be haunted. That is what I have been told. The night that strange things started happening is when 5 of my friends and I went. Once the car entered the church grounds, 3 of my friends said that they could feel evil already. They were the type of people that strongly believed in ghosts and spirits, and since I didn't believe in that kind of stuff, I wasn't scared. So we all hopped out of the car. We just looked around the graveyard looking at the graves. After a while, me and my one friend, Lindsay, got tired of doing that, so we started walking around together. As my friend Lindsay and I were walking, I noticed that she kept looking at a particular spot. Every time her eyes set on it, she went closer. And strangely, I was drawn also. It was a little tiny building not far from the graveyard. It was dark, so all I could see was a sink and a toilet. It must have been an outside bathroom. But Lindsay and I, for some odd reason, were really drawn to wanting to get closer to this little building. I finally pulled her away, as she just about got in it. Before we got to the others, we had to pass the church. She finally cried out that she saw something in one of the windows of the church. I covered that side of her face and told her not to look. I did look myself. I saw nothing. We hurried away quickly and went back with everyone else. We walked around more with everyone, and then Lindsay and 2 of my other friends went to sit in the car. I was with my guy best friend admiring the graves while the other girl was somewhere looking at graves also. Then, out of nowhere, I hear someone yell my guy best friend's name for him to come quick. So he starts running to the car. So do I and my other friend. When we reach the car, I see Lindsay sitting there in the passenger side with the door open and her legs out rocking and focusing on something in the distance. Then my guy best friend goes and tries to talk to her and asks her what's wrong. She wouldn't answer him. I noticed something wasn't quite right about the way her face looked, and I just stood there watching them in shock. Then she grabbed him and he was trying to get her off of him. She was strong. he couldn't get her off. That's when we knew that something was wrong along with everyone else. When she finally calmed down, he was in front of her asking her to say Jesus, and she couldn't do it. She could get the J-E out, but then it stopped. She didn't sound like herself. I was scared and I didn't know what to do. The others ran and hugged the girl that was also in the car too. I was crying and I could tell that she was scared. I don't know what happened when they went to the car, but I still think maybe if I was with her, something like this wouldn't have happened. I did earlier that night when we were walking around and asked her if she was okay. She said yes, as long as you are with me. To this day, I think about that. Finally, things settled down after my guy best friend talked to her. By talking, I mean he believed he could help keep evil away. We then decided to leave. It was for the best. Lindsay was staying the night with me over at my house. And when we got to my house, we came straight to my room. I looked at her and she looked at me. I believe we were both just in shock about what had happened. I looked down at her arm and saw the strangest thing that still keeps me wondering. She had a big red bulged up spot on her left arm, about 4 inches long and 3 inches wide. It was so weird. I touched it and it was hot, while the rest of her skin was cold. I could tell that she was worried about it also. I called my best guy friend that helped her and told him about it. He told me to get her to say Jesus and to read the Bible together. She could say Jesus fine now, and I got a Bible and read a page, and I asked if she would read, and she did. Everything was fine the rest of the night. The red spot was gone the next day, but Lindsay and I have to agree to never go back to Rembert Church. Ever again. And I haven't been, and she hasn't either. But I still wonder about that day. If something really did happen that night, what was an explanation to that big red spot on her arm that was so hot? I don't know the exact day that this event occurred, but I do know that it happened in the fall of 2002. I was 15 at the time. It was about 3 p.m. My brother and I were home alone. He was sleeping in his room just adjacent to my room, so I could see when he would walk in and out of his room. And I was sitting on my bed watching TV. I heard the kitchen cabinet doors being opened and shut. It sounded as if someone was playing musical doors or drumming on them. I thought that one of my parents had gotten home early, so I walked down the hallway into the kitchen to find out that there was no one there. I went back into my room thinking that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. As soon as I had forgotten about what had just occurred, I heard the cabinets being opened and closed again. By this time, I thought it was my brother that had gotten up to get something to eat. So I looked into his bedroom. He was still asleep. So I went back into the kitchen, and again there was no one there. As I walked past the living room out of the corner of my eye, I saw a man sitting at the computer desk. He looked like he was facing the computer. I stood in the doorway and stared at the figure. Since our living room had dark curtains, the dim light from the computer screen lit up the area around it. As I stared at the man sitting at the computer, who I thought was my dad at the time, I noticed that the dim computer light was reflecting off his head and shoulders, so he looked pretty solid. I started to talk to the man. I called out to him, confused at the fact that he was just sitting there, not responding. So I turned around and turned the light on, and when I looked at the spot where the man was sitting, he was gone. It was weird. Later on the same day, I went to the laundry room, and I saw that the door that led to the garage was open, and I can see it was dark inside. I reached out to close it and saw a black claw/hand grab the doorknob and gently but quickly try to close the door. The door did not close all the way. At first, I thought it was my dog, so I opened the door. I turned on the light and found my dog was not inside. but he was outside scratching the door that leads into the garage area from the outside. By this time, my parents were already home, so I knew for a fact that my brother was in his room and my parents were in their room also. That event scared me. And I don't remember telling anyone about what happened until years later after we moved out of that house. I have also had other experiences in that house, but that's another story. Back at the age of 17, I never really believed in ghosts until I lived in this 90-year-old house. I had many strange experiences in this house. I had been physically punched and felt like the air was taken right out of me. And I would have really strange dreams. One dream I remembered having at least 2 times about a young man, probably the age of 30. My parents came home and had company over downstairs in our living room. I said hello to my parents' guests, then walked half up the stairs because our house was a 2-story house. And I saw this young man dressed in an army suit with black boots and a rifle strapped around his shoulder. His eyes were green and his aura was blue. I could see right through him. He saw me and stared at me like "you can see me" type of look. And as I kept staring at him, he raises his left hand slowly and pointed towards my bedroom door. Then looked at me and walked through my door and vanished. I had another similar dream like that. And it was about 12 a.m. in the morning and I ended up waking up and seeing him again, standing in the middle of my room. He looked at me and pointed at the clock, then walked through my TV and vanished again. After I went back to bed, not knowing why I kept seeing him. In this house I lived in, I would be up late watching my favorite anime shows, and I would go downstairs into the kitchen to make myself a pot of ramen noodles. While I was making it, my sister was with me, and she finished hers before mine, so she went back upstairs to her room and turned off the lights. At that time, I had just got done pouring my ramen into a bowl before I can go turn the light on. I not only heard something strange, but I heard a woman's sophisticated laughter downstairs in the living room. And my parents were both asleep. And when I turned the light back on, I heard a child mumble in my ear, making me drop my ramen. I ran upstairs back to my room and turned my TV on and didn't move the whole night. Was it my imagination? Was it real what I experienced? I don't know. But because I experience it so much, I have to say I do believe in ghosts. And I just can't doubt the fact that there is a life after death. And once you've been touched by the paranormal, your life is completely changed. In my life, it has changed a lot. This happened to me a few years ago. And I'm a pretty tough chick, so when this happened to me, I began to believe in something more. Anyway, I was staying at one of my friends who had 2 roommates that swore they were witches. I thought it was pretty funny actually because first, they were 2 airheads, and 2, I believe that if witches did exist, that it would certainly not be these 2. Well, the night before I got possessed, the 2 roommates and my friend were playing on an Ouija board. I was sitting on the couch watching in boredom. I've played on the board a million times before, and I was always the one that moved the piece to say random things, to make it actually interesting. My friend tells me to come play, so I get down on the floor with them and stick my hands on the piece. It flies off the board like someone had shoved it, and it made me laugh. But the other girls were all freaked out. One of the roommates were like, "He doesn't like you. You can't stay here. You have to leave." I remember saying, "You guys are dumb." But they were serious. So I said, "All right, I'll leave." I didn't want to be here with you 2 weirdos anyway. But my friend insisted that I stay and they leave, so I stayed and the 2 girls left. After that, me and my best friend went back to watching TV and laughing at her roommates, and everything was fine. The next morning I woke up, ate some cereal, and was talking to my friend about what our plans were for the day. All of a sudden, my eyes started burning. And they had the feeling of them swelling up really fast, and my vision even kinda went a little blurry. I felt them with my hands and they felt normal. So I ran to the bathroom, thinking what the hell's going on. I looked in the bathroom mirror and my pupils looked bigger than normal. And they were slowly getting bigger. I called my friend into the bathroom and she took a look to see what was wrong with me. And she was like, "That's crazy." I could feel my pupils moving across my eyes as they were expanding. My heart beat a little faster. I started feeling really hot. But as my body's signs were racing, my mind felt calm. As though I wasn't scared or I was really messed up on drugs, but aware of what was going on. At this time, I couldn't move. I just stared at my eyes, which were now fully black. I didn't think or talk or move or run. I just stared. I could hear my friend talking, but I wasn't listening to her. Then the hotness got even hotter. I felt really dry, like my entire body was dehydrated. And I got that feeling you would get if you heard someone you loved just died. The feeling of your heart dropping. I can see my face turning white. It started at the top of my forehead and continued down my face. I saw my skin color changing like it was draining down my face. My friend was yelling at me now. "What's wrong with you?" At the time, she grabbed me to pull me away from the mirror. When she grabbed my arm, she immediately let me go and said, "Oh my God, you're on fire. I'm going to call 911. As she said that, I got lifted off the floor and thrown sideways into her toilet. The back of the toilet flew off, as for the rest of the stuff on it. Lifted up again and thrown into the bathtub, taking the shower curtain and rod with me. I was being thrown around like I was getting my butt kicked, but I didn't feel a thing. I was picked up again and thrown back to the floor, and I could see my friend still in the doorway with this horrified look on her face. But I was still calm, even though I was in a fight, and being thrown around by nothing and losing. I still felt like I was okay. Laying on the floor, my friend reached in and grabbed me by the back of my shirt and jerked me out of the bathroom. As soon as I passed through the door, I felt my eyes go back to normal, way quicker than they had changed, and I felt the blood rush back into my body. I also started pouring sweat, and I felt normal again, except for the fact that I was now freaking out. I ran outside to breathe and to think about what the hell just happened. After a few minutes of talking it over with my friend and getting her to assure me that it just happened, I started looking for bruises or cuts after destroying her bathroom with my body. I had none. Not even a red mark. The cotton on the inside of my shirt, bra, pants, and underwear looked burnt, like they were sitting on a heater for a while. I never went back to that house, and my friend moved out of there days later. If anyone's heard of this happening before, please share with me, because no one can relate. I'd like some answers or some sanity. Thank you. Ghouls, we're slowly wrapping up the state stories. Can you believe it? I think I want to do maybe going along with states, because it keeps me organized a little bit, to do like state-specific urban legends. Would you ghouls like that? Or maybe even state-specific, like, creepypastas. That would be fun, too. Let me know what you think I should do in the graveyard, below, on, that's a fucking car, on what I should do after the state stories are done. But, yeah, as always, ghouls, the last video will be on the top left, the next video will be on the bottom left. All my social medias are on the screen, as well as in the description box below. And remember, there's always someone, or something, watching you.